If you think about housing patterns in Chicago, you think about the destruction of the school systems, those things were actually very deliberate. And so sometimes we jump into systems conversations, service conversations, program conversations, new framework conversations, and we never stop and ask ourselves a couple of questions. One is, the systems that we've created actually work really well. The systems that were designed to crush poor people work brilliantly. They really do. In America, they've done where we ask why black males are getting the outcomes that they're getting. It's because we've created a system that criminalizes little boys at 3 years old. We kick them out of school for willful defiance. That's the sexy term for saying they won't sit down, that they behave different than girls. And because we really have lost our connectedness to them and our ability to care for them like we do our own children, we hide behind terms like collective impact and things like that. Collective impact, place-based work, none of that stuff will ever change anything if you and I do not bring a different level of leadership to our work. If you're not incensed that 3-year-olds get kicked out of kindergarten or preschool, whatever they're in, and you come to a room like this and talk about collective impact, it's not even the same conversation. You see my point? And that's what we do. We get lulled into thinking that if we just have conversations like this, and we get intellectually titillated by a new framework, that somehow it will change a system that was designed to crush these people. It won't. And so let's not even be delusional about if we just get one new framework, if we just get one new way. It doesn't mean that we don't continually need to learn how to execute better, behave better, lead better, think more disciplined about the work. We do need to do all those things. But there's always something that I hold before I even get into the work, and it is the population. The first thing to me that is important is to think about the population. If I'm having a conversation and folks can't even talk to me about the population, it's a waste of my time. While I run the Promised Neighborhoods Institute, the population that I'm holding is that there are 16 million children in America in poverty. The moment I acknowledge that there are 16 million children in America in poverty, it's a different conversation than me talking about the cute little sexy new thing today called Promised Neighborhoods. You see the difference? I can get off on talking about Promised Neighborhoods, and personally, I'll do very well. I'll get a nice paycheck. I'll get to be in the White House. I'll get to be in Congress. I'll get to do all those types of things. But if I don't take up my personal leadership in a different way, I actually am not adding much value to the population, 16 million. And folks, it's very important for us to begin to think about the populations that we're privileged to hold and in service of. Because when I think about 16 million children in poverty in America, I think about solutions that are really quite different than when I'm thinking about running the cute little sexy Promised Neighborhoods effort. You see the difference? I come to the meetings with a different level of intensity. I come to the meeting with a radically different point of view. I come to a meeting actually really ready to blow things up, because what I realize is that 16 million people have been, by design in most cases, put in situations where they're poor. And I actually can't change that playing all the time in the same system. Does that make sense? And so sometimes I feel like we are our own worst enemies. We actually project into folks who don't necessarily share our political bent, our fears, and our basic incompetence to how we take up this work. Because so often we are so afraid to lead differently that before anybody else can even care about what we're doing, we've already counted ourselves out. We've counted ourselves out because we haven't held the population. We actually aren't bringing anything new to the work. We have just become master plagiarizers of concepts. We're actually no better than a parrot that can just hear some concepts and then give them back to you. You go to America today, you will hear collective impact, collective impact, collective impact. You have a drink with someone and ask them, tell me the 5 things around collective impact. They don't know. If they're drunk, maybe they can give you some good guesses, but they don't know. What they know is the dominant logic of the group. They know how to use it in a way that it would assume that they know what they're talking about. But when you start moving very deep, they actually know nothing about collective impact other than that they read the Stanford Social Innovation Review article. They've probably gone to several conferences. But I consider all that work avoidance, folks. Going to conferences, talking, it's all work avoidance. It's all work avoidance. And we have learned to be masters at work avoidance. Because the real work means that we've got to be experiencing some pain. Folks, you can't change systems that are designed to crush people and you're afraid to hurt. You're afraid to get angry. You're afraid to fire someone. You're afraid to come to a meeting with a radically different idea. How many times have you been to meetings where you know someone had a profound idea, they texted in the room or they wrote it on a piece of paper and they didn't say a word, and then they go to the parking lot and they get so much courage now that the meeting's over? Folks, that's what we're doing to ourselves in America and around the world that is not of service to the people that we're privileged to serve. We are leaving our courage at the door. We're leaving our best thinking at the door. And we don't actually have to do that, because we do have ways to hold conversations differently that don't make us martyrs. I'm not asking anyone to go out here and lose their job and do all that. What I am saying that I know that each and every one of us in this room is smart enough to carry ourselves in a different way. We can hold the complexity. We can do all the things that Tim was describing in terms of systems work, programs work, system policy, all of this stuff. But it starts with how you show up in the job. It starts with how you show up in the job or how you don't show up. And the reason why I'm telling you this right now is because in the world that I occupy right now, just to be an African American male is a novelty in most rooms that I'm in. I can't tell you how many other African American men, maybe 5, the whole 3 years that I've been in my job, that I've been in senior level meetings, whether they're at the White House or Congress or with foundations or wherever, where there's been more than 2 of us, and I could probably only name 5, period. And this is with me being on the road 70% of the time in the States. And so just by being different, you could imagine I could ride that out for a long time and actually do no work, right? Just look the part, talk a little bit, go to some conferences, and play the game. Because whether we want to believe it or not, this is a game. It doesn't have to be, but you got to choose to make it be something different. The game for me is to fly around, talk to folks, write some stuff, talk to folks, write some stuff, talk to folks, and write some stuff. That's the game at the intermediary level, unless you do something different. And so let's just be clear about what the game is. And to me, I actually don't think there's anything else to write, because right now I feel like the field is stuck internationally. The field is stuck because we're all afraid to do stuff really differently. So what we keep doing is regurgitating what's been written 30 or 40 years ago. To me, the collective impact literature is really the collaboration literature of the 90s, with a few little tweaks. But the things that make it different, we don't even do, like really the use of rigorous data for learning, continuous improvement, and shared accountability, right? Don't really do that. Like discipline execution. If you came to America and said, tell me what is the technique of discipline that you're bringing to your collaboration? Most people can't tell you. If any of you all have ever played sports, imagine being on a team where they can tell you the system of the offense that they're running. Everybody's just out there doing stuff, right? That's really the idiocy of our sector. We bring no discipline and a lot of heart. And the reason why I'm illuminating this is because it's part of our problem and part of our challenge for us to grow and mature. I used to say in my personal mission statement that I want to be at the nexus of power and money so that I could use it to benefit folks who didn't have the privilege of sitting in the rooms that I get to sit in. And that got me to, it carried me for a while through my career. But I realized that there was something missing from that was most profound. I actually wasn't owning being a results-based leader. I actually wasn't owning being a results-based leader. I had a good heart. I actually cared about people. But the moment I decided, actually, you know what? I actually care about getting results. That's actually why I get up every day. I don't know anyone in this room who would get up and say, actually, I get up because I don't want to get results. I'm going to go to work to not deliver. How many of you get up to say that? So we're starting right now in a good place. But the question is, how do you take up that agency? Do you actually have technique? Do you actually have the competence? Do you actually have the package that would allow you to hold all the complexity and be able to behave in a way that allows you to survive and continue to move the ball down the field? Having a good heart and being a results-based leader, I think, are two different things. And I think we all have to commit to being results-based leaders in service of a population. Because the moment that I decided that I'm going to be a results-based leader and I'm going to hold that Promise Neighborhoods is a wedge in to me being able to impact that 16 million number. And for me to impact that number in a substantive way would mean that we can get to maybe 5 to 10% of the population in America being impacted by our work. That's a powerful acknowledgement. It starts setting things in motion that it's hard to step back from. Because it's really hard to lie to yourself, right? You might lie to a lot of people. But when you decide that you're going to own a population, you're going to get clear about what you can do in service of that population, you start building things that are very different. So the first thing I had to do, was start getting more technique. That's why I went and got my doctorate. But that's also why I learned how to really execute results-based accountability really well. Or whether it's Six Sigma or the balanced scorecard or whatever. Folks, we have to have a variety of techniques to carry out this work. And then the savvy to know how to do them where you don't have to say I'm using RBA right now or I'm using Six Sigma. Your brilliance is in the simplicity of the execution of this stuff. People don't need to know what it is. They just need you to deliver. And sometimes we get so caught up in our own desire to act like we are special because we know something, that we lose sight of the fact that we're not executing. And our brilliance is found in the execution and our ability to deliver. And so I showed up at Promise Neighborhoods, the Institute, in a very interesting way. I was at the US Department of Housing and Urban Development in Chicago. I had been there 11 years. And I had a portfolio of about $500,000 that we basically did community building work, all this type of stuff. But I often say to people that at HUD, while we had the most money, we were the most irrelevant in communities. And the reason for that is because the federal government rarely had a point of view about anything on the ground. It had rules and regulations and compliance. So once you got out of the compliance hat, the agency wasn't doing much. And so I had to decide at that point. I could have stayed there and continued to be a federal employee, but I wasn't really getting happier in my work. Because one, I knew that I felt like I could contribute more. And I realized that so much of our money wasn't being used for good work. It was just basically keeping the system humming. And so I had to decide, actually, was I going to leave? Because I had a great job. I had met my wife in Chicago. I was really comfortable, really comfortable. And sometimes it's hard when you're comfortable to get out of that. And so I was a part of the Annie E. Casey Foundation Fellowship. And one of the vice presidents at Casey said, Michael, when you're in New York, why don't you go see the recruiter? And I did. I went to see the recruiter, and I thought, I will just tell this recruiter all the crazy stuff about what I would do if I got this job. Technically, I was trying to sabotage myself in some ways, but the other part of me is I know my personality enough that if I'm not in the right environment, I will get fired. And so I test people out a lot because I have to be in the right conditions to perform well and succeed. And since I know that, I got to take responsibility for not letting the process of interviewing become seduction. Me getting seduced or them getting seduced by me. It has to be about the strategy and the point of view about the work. And so that's what we talked about. So I gave her all these crazy ideas. She took about 6 pages of notes, and I went home and told my wife, I don't think that worked. And it didn't. I got invited to the interview. And so I said, well, you know what, I'm going to write down what I will do so that when I meet with the folks who run PolicyLink, we can have a conversation around strategy. They've read my resume, so we don't need to do any biographical stuff anymore. We'll have a conversation around strategy. And they bought the strategy. And so here I've gone from acting out, being afraid of stepping into what I said I wanted to do was my own contribution, now to actually having to decide what I'm going to do. And my wife is looking at me, and I'm like, wow. It's one thing when, you know, you kind of can hide around the edges, but it's another when your spouse or your partner is looking dead through you and they're like, you know what, I want you to think real carefully about the decision you're getting ready to make, because it's going to change how I see you. And I was thinking about that all the while I was struggling to make this decision around how do I actually stay in a marriage and feel like I have some presence in my home, and I'm going to walk away from the very thing that I say that I care about when I have an opportunity to go and make it happen. And it was my wife who actually pushed me to take the job. And one day I was cleaning up because I'm really OCD. I really got to have stuff in order. And I picked up a book. Somehow she had been reading this book by Eckhart Tolle, The Purpose of Now. And there was a quote in there with me when I was in my 20s talking about community change, and it fell out. And it was like, wow, I really reconnected with myself in that very moment. And what I was connecting with is that I got fired in Kansas City for doing the very thing that I'm doing right now. I was just in my 20s and didn't have any skill, and I was trying to prosecute the righteousness of the work and got righteously fired and ran out of Kansas City. And so it was ironic that, you know, almost like 13 years later, I'm getting to do the work again with more skill, more preparation, more know-how. And so I took the job. And when I took the job, I quickly realized that, you know what? I could actually help the nation think about how to address the issue of poverty with 16 million children if I just consider I can still stay epistemologically humble but lead and have a point of view about the work. And so that's what we decided to do. We decided that we were going to show folks, because there's nowhere else that you can find this right now, that in a network of 60 communities, we can focus on 10 results and 15 indicators. We can bring the disciplined approach to results-based accountability to the work. We will buy the data system for the network, since it's idiocy to spend 3 years building a data system that doesn't work when there's stuff out there that works today. And we're going to do that, and that's what we did. So in 3 years, we've actually built a more sophisticated national network of nonprofits who are using results-based accountability as a disciplined way of moving from talk to action, beginning to use efforts to outcomes and the Promise Scorecard, a data dashboard, to really measure their progress and track it and target interventions. And we've done all this without any control. I have absolutely no control over the 61 communities in our network. Their relationship is with the US Department of Education. They get their $30 million over 5 years, each community, to do this work. So you can imagine, I'm kind of the odd person out here. You're getting $30 million and you don't have to listen to me, right? But actually, that's the best place to be in. Because every day, you and I are asked to lead in areas where we have no authority. But it doesn't mean we can't lead, folks. It simply means that if we can reimagine the way we take up our leadership, and we can reimagine our role, we can actually transform a nation. And that's what we've been doing. We have no clout. But we figured within the things that we could control how to bring people to us. And so it also meant, though, that we were willing to fight. The US Department of Education was really mad at us for buying the data systems. But to me, I was like, you know what, it's really foolish to have a data-driven effort that's been set up so nicely with a strong results framework, and you're going to offer no point of view about data. Think about that, folks. This is how we sabotage ourselves all the time. We start off with something that is so brilliantly set up to win. And then we start methodically destroying it ourselves. So imagine having a new demonstration project like Promise Neighborhoods, coming from a president who has the Republicans who have said from day one, it is our job to make him miserable. And now you're going to start a data-driven effort where you're using all the language of data, and you're not going to have a data system. You see how really idiotic that is? But that's what we were doing. And so we saw this, and we could have sat there and just said, well, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. That would have been the very thing that would have destroyed the opportunity to help 16 million children, and here's why. The second year into implementation, Senator Klein asked the Government Accountability Office to do a report on promised neighborhoods. Now, do you think that report was done to lift our program up? It was done to destroy it. It was done to destroy because what you know so often in these early initiatives is that, one, the discipline's not there, two, the data's not there, and three, it's just a ragtag group of folks who are just spending money. That's what he hoped to see. The investigators went out across the country looking at all the sites, no control from us, and they didn't find that. They found a network that was fighting about trying to bring discipline to the work, actually fighting about creating cultures of accountability, actually beginning to start showing small signs of progress with children. The report came out, I think maybe like 2 months ago. The very person who, usually when these reports come out, the person who issued it, if it's bad, will do a press release to announce, look what we found. They didn't do the press release. If you pull up Government Accountability Office and Promised Neighborhoods, you'll see the report. On the cover, the title says it all. The cover says, Promised Neighborhoods promotes collaboration but needs to do a national evaluation. That really is criminal that you wasted money to say that. Because the reality is, of course things need to be evaluated, but you never evaluate a large-scale change effort 2 years in. And this is the idiocy, because the very people that they were asking to do work, imagine being a small nonprofit, you went from 20 folks to 75 in 2 years. That was really where our network was at, folks. They went from 20 people to staff up to 75 to begin to start trying to get population level results. That alone, any of you all who ever run organizations, you know that that 2 years is really all about staffing up, right? Because not only do you have to go through the hiring process, now you got to get folks assimilated into your organization and get them on mission. But that wasn't accounted for. And what I'm trying to show you is this. Even in 2 years of all the things that were going on, we were able to not lose the program because of the way we operated. And it didn't start off that way. It started off with us deciding that, you know what? We actually don't have a lot of control, but we can lead, and we do feel like we can influence folks. And so we did around the things that matter. We did around holding the population. We did around the data. We did around the results-based accountability. The department said we can't offer a point of view about results-based accountability, so we would argue back. So you're going to offer no point of view about discipline execution, right? But you're going to go to collective impact conferences. No point of view wanted to offer. No point of view about data. Folks, this is how we destroy the very things that we spent years to. Promised Neighborhoods in America has been 40 years in the making. Folks have asked for years for big amounts of money, flexible pots of money that can be used any way you want to craft the right strategies for populations. And you want those dollars over a sustained period of time. Well, now you got it, and you're getting ready to lose it, not because of Republicans. You're getting ready to lose it because of your lack of ability to execute, and to be disciplined, and to be smart about the work, and to be courageous enough to do something different. And I share that with you to simply say, it did mean that we were in conflict with folks. Absolutely. But we were in conflict in a way where we were respectful. And I stayed on a plane, meeting with the department every single month, in meetings that were really a pain in the butt. But that was my job. Being in relationship, as Tim was talking about partnership, it is hard. When you are really talking about stuff that is hard. I don't like the way you're operating. Well, we don't like the fact that you existed and we didn't sanction you to exist. The federal government didn't start the institute, foundations did. So imagine showing up, having a point of view about somebody else's work. Can you imagine that? That's where the department was. They were like, well, who invited you to this party? We didn't. President Obama didn't say create the institute. Philanthropy did because they wanted it to succeed. But it still didn't mean that we didn't have to manage the politics. My job needed to be able to lead, to have a point of view about it, to say things when things are absolutely just stupid. But to be humble enough to also know that I need to be in relationship with folks, and we need to fix it. And so we spent the last couple of years actually trying to figure out the same way we ask folks to partner on the ground, how do we get our butts in alignment at the national level? We call it high action and high alignment. So much so that today, the US Department of Education this year purchased the Promise Scorecard, which is really the results-based accountability, the results leadership group's data dashboard, which has results-based accountability embedded in it. That's huge systems change for an organization that went from having no point of view to adopting it and making it the standard. And all of this happened because we simply said, we're going to do something different with no authority. And I'm sharing this story not because it's a story about how good we are, because there's a lot of stuff that we still got to fix and get right. And we're nowhere near that population goal that I laid out. But it is to tell you that this all started because, one, I reimagined my role. Two, my team reimagined their role. And three, we supported each other through this process of getting our butts kicked, having people laugh at us, having people saying, well, that's cute, it's not going to work, and staying true to the work, folks. You will be surprised at what you can do when you imagine the work. And to watch folks who sat on the sideline now own the work. That's what you live for, is to be able to go to communities who said, no, thank you, we just got our money and we're just going to do our own thing. To watch them now talking about population level results. To watching them realize, you know what? We're actually not going to solve this problem with a program. We've actually got to have a policy agenda. Or we've actually got to get these systems to change differently. That is the work, folks, in every community that we're in, is to be able to figure out how to lead through that complexity. And so what I'm asking you to think about as you go through this conference, I think the leading practice title is a very good one, because it is about us figuring out how do we lead to practice in new ways. And for me, that leading to practice with new ways starts with me wanting to be committed to results. And to commit to results that are worthy of our time and effort, that are grounded in the understanding of the population. For me to serve a few thousand when there's 16 million is really a waste of my time. It doesn't mean that I'm not helping folks, but that's not what I believe I was put here for. I believe I can do a lot more than that. And if we believe that we can do a lot more than that, then we got to do it. We've got to do it. I've yet to go in a meeting where 16 million children are on the table. I go into meetings where people are high-fiving about 200. And they're relaxing. They're blowing sighs of relief like they actually did something. You see the difference? No, we're just starting. We're 3 years into a powerful 20-year cradle-to-career journey. 16 million children in America. Today we're serving 300,000. We got a long way to go. But in 3 years, we're at 300,000, and that's only probably with about 35% of our network reporting out. But a few years ago, we wouldn't have even been able to tell you that. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that infrastructure doesn't take forever to build, but it is essential. If you want to get to collective impact, folks, we do have to have good organizations. We do have to have infrastructure that allows people to do their jobs quickly. But it also takes us having leaders who are not going to just go along with the status quo. The status quo is designed to deliver what it's delivering. And the moment you buy into that, you are negotiating away your agency to deliver on results. And that's what I'm asking you to think about, is that we actually don't have to do that. We actually do not have to say, you know what, this is all I can do. This is all I can control. Because the power of you to have a different conversation with someone is very profound. Your ability to convince, to persuade, to lead by example will change the world. And if it doesn't, I would much rather go out at least having tried than to not have. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that's going to come negatively to me for failing to try to serve 16 million children in America. Absolutely nothing bad is going to happen. What's the worst that's going to happen? It's already screwed up. It really is, folks. The systems are already masterfully working their magic on poor children. That game's already been won. And so when you can acknowledge the reality of our systems are not accountable by design, they're crushing people by design, it liberates you to really decide what you're going to do. You can either contribute to that, crushing of people, all in the name of doing good. Or you can actually decide that, you know what? There is absolutely enough brain power in this room to transform this nation. It absolutely is. And we believe that in our network. There is enough brain power in our network to change the conversation about results, to change the conversation around discipline execution, to change the conversation around using data in different ways. And there's something powerful that happens when you actually do the work. You actually do have a lot of credibility to speak. And that is the only reason why I'm here right now, is because after 3 years, I actually feel like we have something to say, because we've been doing the work. When I talk about partnership, it's not theoretical. When I talk about collective impact, it's not theoretical. When I talk about feeling the pain of figuring out how to serve 16 million children from scratch, it's not theoretical. I wake up, I go to sleep thinking about it. I wake up and I go to sleep thinking about how to not blow this opportunity. Because there are landmines out here that you just can't see, and all you can do is do the best that you can. And it's tough. It's tough, especially when you have a personality like mine, that you're just going to get in trouble on some days. You're just going to get in trouble. 2 weeks ago, my boss was out of the country, and she sent me an email. Says, Michael, I need to talk to you. And I'm one of those people, don't tell me you got to talk to me and then make me wait. She made me wait like a week. And so she says, you know, Michael, I need to talk to you in person. So I'm starting to run through my head. What conferences did I go to saying crazy stuff? What communities were I in, where I was pushing too hard? I could not figure it out. I was telling my wife, I don't think I've been bad right now. But why does she need to talk to me? And it was so hilarious that when we talked, it actually was nothing bad. But you know, when you know you're on the edge of your competence and you're on the edge of being uncomfortable, you are pushing and pushing and pushing, you actually don't know where it's going to come from. So that was really me projecting my gun shyness out back into the world, because when you are out here on the edge, it is a lonely place, but a most alive and exciting place to be, folks. And I can tell you, coming from poverty, there is nothing more powerful than to have the privilege to be able to serve, to help folks that weren't as fortunate. I was telling folks last night, when I go home for holidays and Thanksgiving and things like that, I get to see the very things that you're working on, and I get a front row seat to it. All I got to do is sit on that couch and wait for it to unfold, because it will be some of everything. The generational dysfunction of watching folks who cannot get jobs, the generational dysfunction of watching your nieces and nephews starting off on the wrong track, all of that. And when you can hold that in a way in which it's not a bad thing, and reflect on the privilege that you have, that I can go home and be in that situation one day, I can be in Congress the next, I can be here the next. That's a gift, folks. And what a shame not to push the limits of it. That's a gift. All my mother knows what to say is, baby, I'm proud of you. She didn't know what the hell I do. She has no idea. All she can say is, baby, be safe on that long flight. That's all she can say to me. That's enough. She gave me what I needed now to do my job. Now the question is, will I do it, folks? Now the question is, will I do it? I was the one that got out. I was the one that got out. And now it's my responsibility to hold that population, and that's what I'm asking each and every one of you to do. You don't have to come from poverty to hold the population, you don't. But we owe it to each other. We owe it to this global community to hold the population and then to bust our ass to do the best, most rigorously sound practice and thinking work that we can to improve the condition on this earth. That's all we've got. And I could have came in here and gave you a lot more. I think Tim did the setup brilliantly for you. All I have is to implore you to take up your agency. When we go to the session later, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the real nuts and bolts of Promised Neighborhoods so you can really get the how-to. But I wanted to start with something sometimes that I think gets lost in all of the things that we talk about, and that is how you show up, how I show up to this work. When you change that and stop talking about what the government's doing or not doing, stop talking about what your peers are doing or not doing, stop talking about agencies, stop talking about what community members are doing, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna own it all. On the good days and the bad days, I'm gonna own delivering. It is transformative. There's no more excuses for me. I don't have the luxury of saying, well, those folks in the community just don't get it. I'm sure you hear that a lot. Or those agencies, they just don't know how to work together. I don't get to say that. Because you know why? And this is the last thing I say. Collective impact is powerful when you all own the same 10 results and 15 indicators. I own the same 10 results and 15 indicators as my colleagues on the ground. So my job is to figure out my contribution from where I sit. That's a painful task, because I'm not on the ground. But it can be done, and what you've heard me describe is the value add. Thinking about owning 10 results and 15 indicators and figuring out my contribution. And when you do that, you can talk with a little bit more courage, you can push a little harder, because people understand you're doing the same work as them. It's a great place to be in when people know that we're all in the same game, experiencing the same pain because we're doing the same work. And if you don't walk away from here with anything else, it is that if you're going to wade into this notion of doing place-based work or collective impact work or whatever, if you strip all of it away, there's only a couple things you need to remember. Hold the population that really needs the service and design a system to meet that demand. Don't just settle for doing few things, a few demonstration things and high-fiving. Hold the population. Help people get that. And then second, own the same results as the folks on the ground. And watch what happens. If you can be as courageous to do that, own the results, hold the population, we will change our global society. Thank you.